So I want to talk a little about the continued censoring of certain people on social media, especially on YouTube, but also on Facebook and other places. Now, I don't know if I should play this whole video. I might just play some audio of it. But I think that the real issue here is that not only are these creators being censored, at a certain point, people who just mention their names are being censored. So I can't even mention the creator that I'm talking about. I believe H3H3 Productions got a strike today, or was it yesterday, for just mentioning the person who we all know we're supposed to talk about. It's ridiculous of, like, with me talking about this and not even, I don't even want to get a strike or anything just for mentioning somebody's name, but we all know who it is. And it's somebody who talks about certain amphibians that have a different sexual orientation because of chemicals. So is that clear enough for you guys? Now, Vox has come out with a video, and I'm not even going to show the actual video. I'm just going to play a little of the audio from it and then skip to a different screen. And I think, I hope my behavior doesn't seem too overly paranoid, because I'll be honest with you, I don't even know what the real rules are anymore. So here we go.
Search YouTube for videos about immigration, and eventually you'll find this.
Mass immigration is not the rainbows and unicorns that our politicians portrayed as. It is, in fact, a tragedy.
Search for videos about Islam, and you'll find stuff like this.
By its very nature, Islam is an intolerant, radical, extremist belief system.
Search for feminism, and yeah.
Newsflash, everybody hates feminism.
These videos are all products of what New York Times Magazine calls the YouTube right, a growing collection of right-wing vloggers, media operations, conspiracy theorists, and activists who built sizable followings on YouTube. They warn about mass immigration, decry political correctness, and mock out-of-control social justice warriors. Why am I on camera for this? They also represent a fascinating challenge for YouTube, a company that wants to make money off of ads on cat videos.
The prophecy is true.
And now finds itself at the center of a huge debate about censorship and hate speech on the internet.
Absolutely vital that we red pill the next generation.
One of the YouTube right's biggest success stories so far is Lauren Southern. She's an activist who went solo after making a name for herself on a conservative site called The Rebel, and her YouTube videos regularly get hundreds of thousands of views.
I got involved in YouTube kind of during the Gamergate anti-feminism phase of the internet. Since then, I've just been commenting on all of the world's craziness.
Southern's videos reflect a lot of the core ideas of the YouTube right. She criticizes political correctness, warns about the threat of refugees and immigration, and even made a whole video criticizing gay pride parades.
If you ever want to spur some homophobia in reasonable people, just take them to a pride parade.
So obviously, I wore my gayest possible outfit for the interview. So Lauren, why YouTube?
For left-wing content, you can get that in real life. You can get that in person. Your professors, your teachers, your newspapers. Left-wingers don't need to go to the dark places of the internet to find their opinions, whereas
So that's enough. You can watch the full video. It's there's a link in the description. And essentially what they end up doing is they're not actually... Now, when I first heard about this, I thought that they were deliberately calling for censorship. I don't know if I heard an actual statement where they said that more creators should be basically censored, but they were hinting at it very strongly that the ones that they mentioned most prominently were Paul Joseph Watson, Lauren Southern herself, who was kind enough to actually take an interview from them. I hope that she knew what they were trying to do, because this is a person, Lauren Southern, they've been trying to keep out of New Zealand and parts of Australia, because they say, well, her views are that unacceptable. And they want to say that this is not censorship. They want to make the claim that this is somehow not some sort of thought police. So that's Lauren. And by the way, I don't really watch that often Lauren Southern's videos, because they're the topics are just, in my opinion, at a certain point, I just got tired of it. I have nothing against her. I think I agree broadly with what she's saying. It's just that I got tired of it, and I haven't had the time to really follow it. But the main point here is that they were basically putting a target over the backs of a lot of these YouTubers, especially Steven Crowder, Steven Crowder, Lauren Southern, Mark Dice. You could say also Hunter Avalone was in that video. A bunch of people. Paul Joseph Watson, did I mention? And really, this is a lot of very smug and hypocritical bullshit coming from Vice, which is it's a news outlet that was kind of founded in the wake of a number of scandals at the Washington Post. Now, this is from Jonah Goldberg and I don't really like Jonah Goldberg either. He's with the National Review, and he's part of the whole, the stupid Never Trump movement. The people who they say the only reason they call themselves principled conservatives is because they oppose Donald Trump. No, that doesn't make you principled conservatives. You need something a little more concrete. You need at least some sort of real concrete idea before you actually call yourself principled. Because if you're principled, you have to have some actual ideas to keep your principles about. But in any case, this is from 2010, and it says the journalist has started to leak like an overripe diaper. Just in case you've been living in a cave, or if you only get your news from MSNBC, here's a story. A young blogger, Ezra Klein, formerly of the avowedly left-wing American Prospect, and now with the avowedly mainstream Washington Post, founded the email listserv Journalist for like-minded liberals to hash out and develop ideas. Some 400 people joined the by invitation only group. Most, it seems, were in the media, but many hailed from academia, think tanks, and the world of forthright liberal activism generally. They spoke freely about their political and personal biases, including their hatred of Fox News and Rush Limbaugh. That, off the record, intellectual bacchanalia has started to haunt the participants like an inexplicable rash after a wild party during Fleet Week. That's actually, I got handed. There's some cool metaphors from Jonah Goldberg. Last month, David Weigel, a young Washington Post blogger hired to report on conservative politics ostensibly from a sympathetic perspective, left the Post thanks to his damning statements on journalists, with things such as conservatives are racist, Rush Limbaugh should die, etc. Now the diaper is coming off entirely, perhaps stretching the diaper metaphor too far. What's inside journalists may stink, but it's no surprise that it does. Journalist emails obtained by the Daily Caller reveal what anybody with two neurons to rub together already knew. Professional liberals don't like Republicans and do like Democrats. They can be awfully smug and condescending in their sense of intellectual and moral superiority. They tend to ascribe evil motives to their political opponents, sometimes even when they know it's unfair. One obscure blogger insists that liberals should arbitrarily demonize a conservative journalist as a racist to scare conservatives away from covering stories that might hurt Obama. That's one of the more famous episodes of that era. Journalist, which I hope you can see the spelling over here. Yeah, you can see at the top here. So that was a group of basically writers and reporters that were they basically ganged together, and they're just like-minded people that were attacking conservative politicians and media. People like Sarah Palin and Fox News, of course. There's nothing wrong with criticizing Fox News and Sarah Palin, but this whole story tore the cover off of the idea that media companies retain objective, professional people. These were people who were consciously using their position with these magazines and whatever to promote a certain agenda and control the media narrative. Okay, this was in 2008 through 2010. Oh, and surprise, it turns out that the O in journalist stands for Obama. In 2008, participants shared talking points about how to shape coverage to help Obama. They tried to paint any negative coverage of Obama's racist and hateful pastor, Jeremiah Wright, as out of bounds. Journalists at such objective news organizations as Newsweek, Bloomberg, Time, and The Economist joined conversations with open partisans about the best way to criticize Sarah Palin. Like an Amish community raising a barn, members of the progressive community got together to hammer out talking points. Amidst the discussion of Palin, Chris Hayes, a writer for The Nation, wrote, "Keep the ideas coming. Have to go on TV to talk about this in a few minutes and need all the help I can get. Times' Joe Klein admitted to his fellow journalisters that he collected the listserv's bric-a-brac and fashioned it into a brickbat aimed at Palin. Many conservatives think journalist is a smoking gun that proves not just liberal media bias, which is also, he says, already well established, but something far more elusive as well. The Sasquatch known as the liberal media conspiracy. I'm not so sure. In the 1930s, the New York Times deliberately whitewashed Stalin's murders. In 1964, CBS reported that Barry Goldwater was tied up with German Nazis, which is that's kind of ridiculous because I think Goldwater was I think his father was Jewish or something. In 1985, the Los Angeles Times polled 2,700 journalists at 621 newspapers and found that journalists identified themselves as liberal by a factor of 3 to 1. Their actual views on issues were far more liberal than even though that would suggest. Just for the record, Ezra Klein was born in 1984. In other words, journalist is a symptom, not the disease, and the disease is not a secret conspiracy, but something more like the open conspiracy H.G. Wells fantasized about, where the smartest, best people at every institution make their progressive vision for the world their top priority. As James DeLong, a fellow at the Digital Society, correctly noted on the Enterprise blog, the real problem with journalists is that much of it consisted of exchanges among people who worked for institutions about how to best hijack their employers for the cause of progressivism. For a liberal activist, that's forgivable, I guess. But academics, reporters, editors, even liberal opinion writers aren't supposed to coordinate their messages with the mothership. The conservative movement at least admits it is a movement, even though conservatives outnumber liberals 2 to 1 in this country. I don't think that's true. Establishment liberalism, not just in the press, but also in the White House, academia, and Hollywood, holds power by refusing to make the same concession. This isn't about ideology. We just call them like we see them. We don't have an agenda. The open conspiracy that perpetuates that lie is far more pernicious than any chat room. So this was in 2010. I think people are now of the mind that the media has really gone off the deep end. And by the media, I'm talking about the ones that are more, the more upper crust media. The Washington Post, New York Times, Daily Beast, and then especially the network CNN and MSNBC. And they like to paint Fox News as the real biased platform. But when you see something like this, these were people who were exposed for saying things that were deliberately, they were deliberately saying things that were extremely biased and would color the stories that they were covering. Using this list server, so they were communicating with each other, coordinating their press campaigns. And to be honest with you, it really shows, in my opinion, that these people failed upward. Because some of the people mentioned in this article, Ezra Klein is the person who founded Vox. This person who had this ridiculous, this concocted world of people who would coordinate their stories, and then they want to claim all this talk of a liberal coordinated media is nonsense. Well, no, it's not, because you're literally doing it. You're using a media server in order to work together to shape every single story. So every single story starts along the same template because you guys come up with it ahead of time. Then it's not a conspiracy theory. It's actually a conspiracy that you did. So that's really what I think is the problem with Vox. Trying to call these people, the far right of YouTube or whatever. Well, then what were you doing then? Do you have any right to judge? It's the same attitude, by the way, that people took towards Gamergate. Gamergate, and by the way, I'm not as much of a Gamergate freak as other YouTubers, but Gamergate was all about how suddenly, overnight, if somebody criticized a certain social justice bent in gaming, all of the gaming magazines, especially with Kotaku, I think what's the other one? It's Polygon. They would put out articles condemning this racist or sexist behavior on the web and on these forums or whatever. That is the classic template of coordinated media. Okay, coordinated war room media. That's basically what they do. So in this article, you have three people: Ezra Klein. You have another person was Chris Hayes. Another person was Dave Weigel. All of them, their careers survived, even though they proved that they cannot be trusted to give a fair and honest appraisal of the news and what's going on in the world. They cannot be trusted because they've been proven to have such a deep bias and such a lack of professionalism that nothing that comes out of their mouth can actually be listened to without suspecting, well, what are they trying to do here? Are they trying to promote a certain agenda? Well, what happened? So Ezra Klein gets his job. He's basically running Vox now. Okay, running a much larger operation than what he was doing at the time. You have Hayes, gets his own show on MSNBC. You have Weigel, who had to leave the Post at the time and now is where? He's back at the Post. So where's the accountability here? How can these journalism outlets claim that they're actually trying to report on the news when they reward people who violate some of the basic principles of journalism? They can't. It's a bunch of nonsense. I think maybe the best explanation is that Weigel's label as somebody who covers the right has been removed a bit. You know, he's now just a general journalist or whatever the hell he does. And this is the reply from Steven Crowder. Hold on. We're going to have to scan down.
Search YouTube for videos about immigration and...
Okay? You have millions and millions and millions, and you still suck. So Vox finally addressed the elephant in the room in its latest video, YouTube's messy fight with its most extreme creators. Now, question of the day is, here, they mention advertisers, right-wing channels, white supremacists, algorithms. Now, without cheating, I want you to answer this question today. Without cheating, skipping to the rest of the video or the show here, here's the question. What one thing do you think Vox did not mention? Algorithms, right-wing channels, white supremacy. What one thing do you think was not at the tip of their tongue? Comment below, I want to see, and then you can watch the rest of the video, and you're most likely incorrect. So, here, you can go watch this video on the Vox channel. I recommend that you watch all of it. Bring up some B-roll, not gay Jared. He only briefly, by the way, goes into a screen grab of me. So, right off the bat, I find funny. He only briefly includes a screen grab of me amongst these other extremists, and then I'm covered up by the word conspiracy theorists. But never actually addresses, fun enough, people like me or Ben Shapiro or arguments, even though this channel itself has racked up more plays rebutting this particular man from Vox than anyone else. It's not even close. And it's pretty clear with the video, we'll get to this, to the recap, with this whole, this is determining what YouTube wants to be, that the video is designed to intimidate YouTube and is advocating for censoring speech they don't like. And it's also, by the way, just before we move on to specifics, it's extremely disingenuous, the video, to use a smear campaign tactic, showing a bunch of YouTubers with few-second sound bites and then just lumping them all together, including us, with the same ideology as like white supremacists. This is about smearing any right-leaning channels on YouTube as being white nationalist extremists. So it's important to note that because they set that up and Vox actually sees themselves as neutral. So Marley was dead to begin with. Now on to some specifics. Here's clip 1.
Search YouTube for videos about immigration, and eventually you'll find this.
Mass immigration is not the rainbows and unicorns that our politicians portrayed as.
Now the key word there, no. I said he would receive a Turbo Man eventually. Right off the bat, eventually. Except it's the opposite of that. All right, so Lauren Southern's video that he mentions right there, it's actually 87th.
87th.
Wow. It's showing up on YouTube when you search immigration.
That's a lot of pages
at the time of this recording.
You got to do some work to get to.
You got to do some work. Or you have the iMac 98-inch screen.
Yeah, exactly.
And he goes on to mention Paul Joseph Watson, 99 results down if you search for Islam. Now, the first results that popped up, if you're talking about, aren't even right-wing at all.
So I'm going to pause it, and again, you can, I will put a link to that video before this goes up, because I think it's important for people to be able to face their accusers. But you can't face your accusers when they seem to get preferential treatment with everything. Look, I don't think that Vox should be censored. But I do think that when you look at what these journalists were supposed to be doing, the people who were with journalists, not all of them work for Vox, but some of them were, they're working for MSNBC now and whatever. They are trying to portray themselves as the real people who expose the problems going on in society and in politics and in government and everything. But what have they been doing instead? They've been going to free speech platforms or what once were free speech platforms, and saying to them, you can't have these people because they present views that are unacceptable. Well, that wasn't for you to judge back when you were on Journalist, and it's not for you to decide now. And that's basically that's the flaw of having these media outlets determine exactly what's acceptable or not. That's the flaw of what's going on with YouTube right now. And when you see channels that are much bigger than this one, much bigger than this one, like H3H3, which is censored even though it has no sympathetic opinion towards the person that we were talking about before, the person with the light and the loafer amphibians. When they go after outlets like that, what do you think is going to happen as a result of that? Do you think people are going to moderate their views more, or do you think that people within those liberal audiences are going to start to stroke their chin and say, well, look, I actually thought that this person was full of crap when he said that they were going to censor him. Now, not only are they censoring him, but they're censoring the very mention of his name. Okay, and then you have other outlets that are observing this and saying, we have not gone far enough. We have to censor more. There have to be more people thrown off. We have to feed the beast, the censorship beast. And what do you think is going to be left? Vox is not a trusted media outlet among people who are on the progressive left anymore. They kind of discredited themselves in the 2016 election because they were putting a lot of pieces out about how critics of Hillary Clinton were misogynistic, and they were basically just a conspiracy theorist, and they were buying into the whole rumor that she was unhealthy, which later turned out to be true. So Vox will not gain more supporters for their cause because they've already censored people on. They've kind of, it's not even censorship. It's more of a sheepdogging effort that the people on the left call it. That they try to tell people, look, it's pointless for you to oppose us. You might as well join us and fight the people on the right. Well, that didn't exactly work in 2016. Now in 2018, they're trying to say, we're going to silence the people on the right, and therefore all the people on the left are going to join us too. That's not going to work either, because there are already enough people on the left to have split the left up as to what's going to happen with this censorship. I covered it last week. Even Kyle Kulinski, who I don't really know his channel that well, so I can't even say whether I dislike him or I do like him. I probably don't like him, but I can't fairly comment on him. But Kyle Kulinski even said, we can't have this type of censorship and then expect ourselves to be given the same freedoms that are denied to others. Essentially, he's a free speech absolutist, he says. There's other people. Jimmy Dore also condemned it. Jamarl Thomas condemned it. Tim Black condemned it. There's a host of people on the left who are saying that this has gone way too far. And the people who are supporting this now have to contend with people in their own camp, such that if this effort fails, and if a lot of these creators become more popular as a result of this censorship campaign, if the same creators who are being censored become more popular, it will be seen as a tremendous self-inflicted wound on the part of the left, and there will be a more tangible split. You'll see several of them breaking away and saying, I don't identify with this group anymore. I'm going to be going out on my own. And that's really what I think is the flaw in the strategy here. And it's beyond just strategic here. Usually I'll talk about something, I'll say, look, it's bad strategy. It's not going to work. And I hope that, I haven't audited my predictions, but typically I think that I have a good record on that. So, but usually I try to stay away from whether something is correct and moral as opposed to whether it's correct in that it's smart strategy. In this case, I'll say it's also kind of immoral. It's unethical. It shows the emptiness of somebody's convictions that you go around trying to claim, oh, we're all for keeping society civil, so therefore we're going to ban people. Well, you weren't for banning people back when you were doing the things that were uncivil and whispering in the background and manipulating stories and creating this cacophony of nonsense that was targeted towards certain individuals while you were simultaneously trying to block off criticism of people that you supported. So that's about it. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment when this uploads, and also share the video, and I'll see you guys later.